Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Monday, May 11th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. The title of today's podcast is American Dream or Ponzi Scheme. A big review of what we've been discussing over the past few weeks. We're going to get some market performance. We're going to go straight to the usdebtclock.org. Check that out again. And we're just going to go sort of down the list on a handful of issues. And today we're just going to ask a bunch of questions, draw some connections, and see where things land. But first, a happy belated Mother's Day to everybody. Obviously, yesterday was Mother's Day. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you're all spoiled to some degree. I know it might be difficult for many of you to be together, but perhaps a FaceTime call or Skype or Zoom was somewhat good enough. I tried getting my mother a bouquet of Lysol, but they were sold out of Lysol, so I guess a bouquet of flowers had to do, so hopefully those were sufficient. But American Dream or Ponzi Scheme. Okay, so market performance today. Dow relatively flat but down for the day. S&P 500 was up. NASDAQ 100, NASDAQ was up. It's basically becoming a law for the NASDAQ to close in the green. I'm waiting for that to become law. Stay tuned. Right now on over hours or futures trading, we have Dow Jones down 0.8%, the S&P 500 down 0.6%, and the NASDAQ 100 down about 0.2%. The Japanese markets are trading live right now in the cash trade, down but relatively flat. Across the pond in Europe, depending on the index, they were sort of all over the board. The UK was flat. Germany was down 0.7%. The French were down 1.3%. Italy was down a third. And the Spanish markets were down 1.5%. In the cash trade right now, we have the Australian markets down 1.25%. On the commodity front, we have WTI trading at $24.34 a barrel, and we have discussions that Saudi Arabia is going to slash production even further. We have Brent, the international metric, trading at $29.70 per barrel. Natural gas down again, $1.82 per million British thermal units. Gold is right at $1,701 an ounce, and silver is trading at $15.50 per ounce. On the bond front, Uncle Sam's 10-year Treasury note is yielding 0.69%. So again, still remains somewhat in that range, but a little bit more on the high side over the past couple of weeks, right around that 70 handle. Now, usdebtclock.org to discuss the U.S. national debt, the deficit, Social Security, Medicare, state debt, local debt, pretty anything where you can make the linkage that it's a Ponzi scheme. I mean, this whole entire system is, by definition, a Ponzi scheme. The entire economy, the government, what the Federal Reserve is doing, and that's why the federal government, in conjunction with the Federal Reserve, is doing what they're doing, to the degree at which they're doing it. Because this is a complete system collapse. A complete system collapse. And they do not want you to know about it. They do not want you connecting the dots. They do not want you asking simple questions. Again, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Curtain's gone. The curtain's gone. Everything is being done right in front of us. Steven Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, was out there on CNBC. Why? Because the futures markets were down this morning. Can't have that, can we? Get out there, Stevie boy. Go see what you can do. Well, he did a good job. S&P 500 closed up. NASDAQ closed up. He did a good job. Turn it around. By saying what? That we're going to spend as much money as we have to do whatever it takes. Does the Treasury Secretary not know how this system works? The Treasury doesn't control the purse strings. The Congress does. Not the Treasury, not the Secretary of the Treasury, not the President of the United States, not the Federal Reserve. The Congress does. Which by default means the people. But of course the people don't know what the hell is going on. We're not paying attention. Nobody's rioting. Nobody's saying enough with this. Nobody's stopping anything. So they're going to continue to get away with it, and they're going to continue to perpetuate this Ponzi scheme. Why? Because they can, because nobody's saying enough is enough. We talk about Bernie Madoff here quite a bit, and have over the past couple of weeks, which is why I want to do this one today, American Dream or Ponzi Scheme, because old Bernie would still be in business had it not been for the great financial crisis. And had old Bernie had access to a printing press, he would still be in business, even with the great financial crisis, because he just could have printed the money. And all of his clients who wanted their money because, well, they said they saw the stock market going down and they needed the cash. They maybe had other assets. Maybe they were heavy into real estate. That's not liquid, but they need the cash. So, hey, Bernie, sell those stocks, sell those bonds, get us our cash. He didn't have it. Why? Because it was a Ponzi scheme. He didn't have it. Government doesn't have it. The states are broke. They're going to a federal government, asking a federal government that in turn is broke for bailout money. Feds don't have it. So where do we have to go? Have to issue debt. Well, who wants to buy it? Nobody. The only person, the only entity, the only institution that has the ability to buy it, especially in the issuance that we're throwing out there into the market, is the Federal Reserve. Pension funds don't want it. Insurance companies don't want it. Mutual funds don't want it. Money markets will take it. Foreigners don't want it. Foreign investors on the individual side and foreign governments don't want it. The Federal Reserve and money markets, that's it. That's it. And that's according to Goldman Sachs. And we've discussed that research here before, and we are in agreement with it. And I think it's going to be even worse than that. The Federal Reserve is just going to continue to buy and buy and buy because there's nobody else to buy it. Because it's junk. It's garbage. We're not going to make good on this. It's $25 trillion. And we're going to talk about a little bit of perspective because we like to put things in context, add a little perspective to things because I think that's very important. What's the American dream? Right? I mean, of course, that's to his or her own liking. But generally speaking, that generic form of the American dream, you grow up, you get a good education, hopefully you make it to college, you graduate college, you find yourself in a good position, you establish yourself a little bit, maybe you find yourself a husband or a wife, you get married, you buy a house, have a couple nice cars, start a family, have a couple kids, save up, go on a few vacations, save up for retirement, rinse and repeat. You hope the same thing for your children, at least to have the same level of living standards that you went through and hopefully better for your children. Then just continue the process, rinse, repeat. Well, that ain't going to happen. That's not going to happen with $25 trillion in debt, with a national deficit this year alone that's going to be $4 trillion, if not more, with a federal government that is going to issue $3 trillion in debt just over this series of 3 months, April, May, and June, over the second quarter of this year alone, and with the Treasury Secretary coming out and saying, we're going to do whatever it takes, we're going to spend as much money, whatever it takes, in concert with the president and in concert with Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Is there any cost to this? Of course there is. And you're all going to see it. And everybody who doesn't think so, well, just wait. Just wait. $25 trillion. You know, we've done a couple of those presentations, capital economics presentations that are posted to our YouTube channel and to our website, thecapitalnews.com. I hope you check those out. I'm trying to keep them shorter, 15 minutes or less, enough to keep your attention, but enough to also focus on the key points and hopefully drive home the point that we're trying to make, that debts and deficits do matter, and discuss why that's the case. But just over the course of the past week and a half when we started posting these videos, we had a national debt that was at $24.5 trillion. That was the first video. By the time we posted the second video, only a few days after, it was at $25 trillion. Well, over the weekend, okay, it now stands at $25,160 billion. $25,160 billion. So just over the course of the past few days, we have added an additional $160 billion. A little bit of perspective, a little bit of context. Let's look at Bill Gates. Everybody knows Bill Gates, right? Founder of Microsoft. He's worth about $106 billion. And of course, a lot of that is in the form of his wealth is in his share price with Microsoft. Okay? And of course, that's overvalued, but I digress. $100 billion, his entire life, creating a product that almost everybody uses on a daily basis or has used in their lifetime. All right? $100 billion. Uncle Sam just spent more than that in the past weekend. So for all of you Democrats out there, or anybody who likes the argument, all we have to do is tax the rich a little bit more, you have no math skills whatsoever. None whatsoever. What Uncle Sam just spent in the past weekend is what it took Bill Gates his entire life to accumulate. How are you going to tax them? You could tax all of these people, 100%. You can confiscate all of their entire net worth, and you're not going to put a dent on this thing. You're not going to put a dent in it. So how do you think, well, if we just raise it by 2% here and we'll be able to pay for this, that, and the other, and everything's just going to work in harmony and peace and rainbows and butterflies and everything? Ain't going to happen. This is math. This is math. And of course, who's in charge of mathematics and education in this country but none other than the government, of course. And we might get to that too, right? Because that's in part of the American dream, getting that education. And we're going to talk about a handful of things that are contributing to the national debt and to people's personal debt loads. And of course, student debt is front and center because just over the past decade since the great financial crisis, we've tacked on another $1 trillion in student loan debt. We've gone from about $600 billion to 1.6, almost $1.7 trillion in student debt. All right. So we just sort of somewhat defined the American dream. I think everybody's on the same page, generally speaking. Then you have the Ponzi scheme, right? Well, the Ponzi scheme is you always need to get another sucker because you're playing with somebody else's money, which you're always trying to do. Bernie Madoff, prime example, that Ponzi scheme. You're investor number one. You give Bernie $1 million. He goes, puts it in the marketplace with it, maybe actually tries to do something. And he's okay, gets another person in there. They give him $1 million. First person number one, investor number one. Hey, Bernie, I need some money. Not a problem. He says, not a problem. Why not? Because investor two just came in with $1 million. How much you need? Oh, I need about $100,000. Okay, I'm just going to take that money from investor number two. Here's $100,000, gives it to investor number one. And as long as he can continue to get people coming in, and as long as people don't come in at the same time or over the course of a very short period of time and say, Bernie, I want my money, this Ponzi scheme can keep going. If you understand the banking system, too, ladies and gentlemen, the fractional reserve banking system, that's exactly how the banking system runs too. That's how it operates. If everybody and their mother went to the bank and said, give me my cash, couldn't happen. Somebody's going to lose out. Somebody is not going to get their money because they don't have it. All they have to carry in their vaults is about 10%. 10%. Everything else is out there in the form of loans. But guess what your cash is? Guess what your deposits are for the bank? They're liabilities. They're responsible for them. So if everybody went in and demanded their cash, they would have to have huge call on all of those loans, which means all those businesses that have money outstanding in equipment, inventory, homes, anything. Got to sell them, got to liquidate because those banks have to make good on those deposits because they're their liabilities. It's the same thing. You just keep churning it, keep churning it, keep churning it. It's all based off of faith, trust, and confidence in the system. The system is a Ponzi scheme. And people would be 100%, I think, staring this right in the face if it wasn't for all of the chaos that's going on right now. And if it wasn't for the fact that so many people are starting to get their stimulus checks, quote-unquote stimulus checks, right? It's a huge thing, psychologically speaking. If this was a redux, a complete redo of the great financial crisis, and all of the money just simply went to the banks in corporate America, which is pretty much doing anyway. But if it was just 100% that like it was back then, you'd have your pitchforks in the street right now. But just give the people a little taste. Make them the middlemen and women. Make them the conduit between the government, the Treasury, the Federal Reserve. Give that money to the people, and then they'll go and give it to the bank, and then they'll think that they're getting bailed out. That's all it is. It's a psyop. That's all it is. That's it. You feel like you're getting something, yet most of that money is going to pay off debts, which we're starting to see was the case. Pay your landlord, pay your mortgage. Well, the bank owns that. Some sort of financial institution owns it. That's all you are. You're just a middleman or a middlewoman. People are going to start waking up to the fact that this whole system is a Ponzi scheme. It was bad a decade ago, because it was a Ponzi scheme back then too. But $100 billion here, several $100 billion there sort of did the trick. Now it's in the trillions. And they're saying, we'll spend more. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. The Fed's balance sheet expanded by over $2 trillion over the past several weeks. We have 33.5 million Americans who have filed for unemployment insurance over the past 7 weeks. Last week on the jobs report, that was our podcast, an historic jobs report. because it was history in the making. And we took the time to read that report in its entirety because we thought it was that important. And if next month's is just that important, we're going to do the same thing. This is a Ponzi scheme. Social Security, which we talk about and write about at length in our book, The Cynic's Guide to Investing, is a Ponzi scheme. This is not your E-Trade account. This is not your bank account. This is not your Vanguard account or wherever you might invest your money or put your deposits, your savings account. That's your name, it's your account, it's your money. You take it when you want. That's how that works. Social Security, yeah, you got a Social Security number. Yeah, you have your name. Yes, you pay into the Social Security fund, but it doesn't go into your account. It goes into that of retirees, somebody who is retired. That, by definition, is a Ponzi scheme because you are the new sucker coming into the system to pay off an earlier sucker. That's how that works. It is, by definition, a Ponzi scheme, and that, coincidentally, not so coincidentally, is what is driving a lot of the national debt. Social Security, we spend almost $1.1 trillion per year. And we are going to have a huge influx of baby boomers starting to retire. They're going to start retiring. They're at least hitting 65. They're going to start collecting Social Security to some degree. Where's the money going to come from? Especially if you do a payroll tax holiday, which is what is being discussed in the White House. Right? Because it's the payroll tax that funds it. Well, you have fewer people working, which of course we do right now. So that's just driving deficits and debts up all over the place, national, state, local, everywhere. What do you think that's going to do to Social Security? And then in turn the deficits and then in turn the national debt. I mean, it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You're trying to get some sort of short-term stimulative effect. That's all it is. It's short-term. And you have to ask yourself on a cost-benefit basis, does it make sense? To this economist, the answer is no. Not even close. Not even close. The only way that would work, the only way you would get me on board with it, is if they drastically cut spending, which they're not going to do. Because Donald Trump loves to spend money. Mnuchin loves to spend money. Larry Kudlow now seemingly loves to spend money. The Democrats love to spend money. Republicans, hey, if they're in charge, they love to spend money. There's no fiscal conservatives anymore. $4 trillion debt, and it will be more than that. There's no fiscal conservatism anymore. They don't care. So who's going to stop it? It's going to stop itself. And when we see it, it's going to be inflation. It's going to be stagflation. And if things really get out of hand, it's going to be hyperinflation. And if we continue with this, running these types of deficits, running these types of debts, it will be hyperinflation because there's not going to be any other way out of it because it's not going to be growth. We are in a severe recession. We are headed towards depression because of what the federal government and the Federal Reserve has done. Extremely, extremely reminiscent of what took place in the 1920s, 1930s. Basically the same playbook. You're going to get the same outcome. Definition of insanity. But we're going to keep doing it because that's who's at the helm. No outcry, no whimper, nobody saying enough is enough. Except, of course, until the states came forward and said we're going to need bailed out too. But it was perfectly fine to bail out a whole bunch of corporations who have access to markets. They have access to financial markets, so why do they have to go to the taxpayer? Well, because they finance Mitch McConnell and the Democrats and the Republicans, and well, they need bailed out. That's okay. But as soon as the states come, oh no, that's the line in the sand. You mismanaged your finances for all those years pre-COVID, that's your problem. Same story with the corporations. Again, we are completely against bailouts across the entire board here, but we don't control it. We don't control it. We have no representation. We have no recourse. We outline that in our letter. Check that out at thecapitalnews.com, representation and recourse. We have none. You have none. You get nothing. You'll get your sit down and shut up money, and it's all it is. You're going to take it. You're going to sit down and shut up. And if it takes more to keep this system going, this Ponzi scheme moving, then it'll be another $1,200 or another $2,000 or $2,500 or whatever number they want to come up with. And this is the year 2020. It is a presidential election. They will keep it going because none of these politicians want to be held accountable for squandering everything, prior to COVID-19, and now they're really ruining it as we speak. No Democrat wants to take responsibility for this. No Republican wants to take responsibility for this. The president has already said he's not responsible. So they're just going to keep printing. They're going to keep spending. They're going to keep borrowing. It's all they're going to do. Because if they let this house of cards come down, then everybody's going to know that's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it is. A house of cards built on a foundation of sand. And you know what? As I sit here speaking right now, I think most people know this. I think most Americans know this. They know it in their gut. They're just afraid to admit it. Because the American dream is going to sound more like a nightmare. And you have, the late great comedian George Carlin, who did a tremendous bit on all of this type of stuff years ago. And he said, you know why they call it the American dream? Because you have to be asleep to believe it. And that's all it is, folks. I mean, think about it. Do the math. Let's just use some round numbers, some even numbers to make the example clear. As to this, is this a dream? Is it a nightmare? Is it a Ponzi scheme? What's going on here? Because a part of that American dream, right, is to find that good job. Well, good job's what? Your steady 40 hours a week. That's 2,080 hours per year, right? 40 hours times 52, 2,080 hours per year. What are you taxed at? Well, let's just say for the sake of argument, again, to keep the numbers easy, 25%. Now, some people are taxed more than that just at the federal level. But let's just say in totality, 25%. Federal, state, and local taxes, 25%. All right. 8 hours a day, 25%. 8 divided by 4, 2 hours. 2 hours out of every day is completely gone. Completely gone. A quarter of your day is gone. And it goes to the government. Now, what about your transport, right? Because you're not getting paid for your commute. Is it an hour in total, or is it an hour one way? So there's a couple more hours you might be losing in conjunction, and that's costing you, right? Because you got to pay. It's your time. It's your vehicle. It's public transportation. It's your fuel. It's whatever. Wear and tear on the vehicle, etc., etc. You're not getting that back. You're not getting that back. Now, you take 25%. You work 12 months out of the year, right? Well, divide that by 4. That's 3 months. So you work for 3 months for the government. Come New Year's, everybody's happy and drunk. Well, starting that next day through March, everything you've earned, you just give it to the government. That's what we're doing. And if you had something to show for it, I'd say, hey, at least we got something to show for it. K through 12 education system, best in the world. But it isn't. No child left behind, falling off a cliff. Race to the top, at the bottom of the heap. Kids in this country can't do math, they can't spell, they can't write, their reading comprehension is terrible. It's a travesty. It's a travesty, and we're supposed to be the greatest country ever. It's a travesty. You have college. 1.6, 1.7 trillion in student debt. It's completely gone from an educational institution to one of entertainment and one of profit and just simply money making. It's college basketball, it's college football, it's making the gym look good, it's making the cafeteria look good. It's all it is. Because they don't give you a guarantee. And again, I have nothing wrong with profit. I'm a capitalist, all right? I have nothing wrong with profit, but you have to look at it on the other side of things too. You can go and buy a car for $20,000 and the dealer, the car manufacturer is going to give you some type of guarantee, some type of warranty. But you can go to college for 4, 5, 6 years, go into debt up to your eyeballs, 5, 6 figures worth of debt that's going to take years and years to pay off if you ever do. And these universities don't give you any type of guarantee that they're going to give you, that you're going to have a job within 6 months. No guarantee whatsoever. You watch. As we make our way through this monstrosity, you watch how many universities go under because they can't afford it. Students don't want to go. You're already starting to see students sue universities because they're not there for their room and board, tuition, however they shut down their schools, whatever they did, we want our money back. This is going to get nasty. It's going to get nasty. And when people start getting hungry, and when food prices start spiking, which they're already doing, they're not going to give a damn about their student debt. They're not going to give a damn about their credit card debt because other things are going to take precedent. And it will get hairy, and it will get nasty. And that's why you have a Federal Reserve that is out of control, a president, a secretary of the Treasury, a Congress that is out of control, because They know perfectly well what's coming. It's not just us here at the Capital News and some other similar podcast or stations that talk about this type of stuff. They know what's coming. They have to play stupid, and some of them do a better job than others because it comes natural to so many of them. Yeah, they know what's going on here. They know the corruption better than anybody because they're the ones managing it. $25 trillion? We know what debt is here at the Capital News. It's future consumption and production brought forward to today. Well, you look at this globally, you're talking, $250 trillion in debt globally? That's a lot of future consumption and production. People living well beyond their means, and have done so for generations. So what do you think is going to happen on the other side of this pendulum? People are going to have to live well within their means for almost an equal amount of time. Because when you take into consideration all of the promises that are out there, Social Security, Medicare, unfunded liabilities, almost $100 trillion, depending on the accounting, state pensions, they're bust. So what do you think is going to happen on the other side of this? You think taxes are going to go down, or you think they're going to go up? Your property tax, your school tax, consumption tax, income tax, corporate tax. They even start levying taxes that they don't even have because they need to raise money. It doesn't matter if you're a blue state, a red state, a purple state. They're broke. They're bust. You look at the demographic cliff that we have in much of the developed world. Japan, Germany, much of Europe, even China, the United States, not so much here, but it is here. But compared to Germany and other parts of Europe, Italy, Japan, no, they have it much worse from a demographic standpoint. Ponzi scheme or an American dream? I think it's pretty clear cut what type of system we've had here. It's an illusion. And people, of course, are getting restless. They want to go back. They want to go to work. They want to go to school. They want to go out to a restaurant, a bar, sporting event. These things aren't coming back anytime soon. And I caught, an interesting clip that happened to be it's sort of heartbreaking, but it's what we've been discussing here for quite a while, for months actually. And it was on CNN, and it had a interview of a restaurateur. And basically just saying, look, you can open up the economy whenever you want. But when are people going to start coming back in? When are they going to feel comfortable? What happens if you have, which you're going to have, especially in many parts, you're going to have waiters and waitresses wearing masks? As a patron, as a customer, are you going to have to sit there wearing a mask? So every time you take a bite, every time you take a sip, are you going to have to remove your mask? Is that a dining experience that you want to experience? Is that the ambiance and the atmosphere that you're looking for? You got to open the door. Are you going to be able to open the door, or is the restaurant going to have to hire somebody just to open the door? Because otherwise they're going to have to be wiping up and down the handle all the time. Typically they wipe down the table when you're done, remove the cloth, whatever. Well, what about the seats now? Because you probably pulled out the seat with your hand. Are they going to have to scrub down and wipe down the seats now too? What's that going to smell like, all that disinfectant? Clorox, bleach, Lysol. Is that what you want to smell when you're going to eat a steak dinner or anything, or a burger? These are all the things. And the restaurateur knows this. And he said most restaurants are going to end up going out of business. And I think he was also the head of some restaurant association as well. So he knows the numbers. He knows it like the back of his hand. He's a chef restaurateur. He knows what's coming. Because it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. You can say open up, liberate Minnesota, liberate Virginia. You can say these things. Thunder Thumbs can tweet them all they want. It's the social and economic behaviors. It's the behavioral changes that you have to take into account. And they're doing as much as they can to throw as much money at this as they can because they know the game is over. The game is over. And there's no leadership whatsoever. And it breaks my heart because Trump had the opportunity of a lifetime to really level with the American people about what was going on. Just like Obama had an opportunity of a lifetime. He blew it. Trump's blowing it. He's doing the same thing in overdrive. Level with the American people. Explain what I've just explained. I'll do it. Put me on camera. I'll write it. I just go off the top of my head. I have a few bullet points and I go. That's how I do these podcasts. This isn't scripted. You've seen my letters. I can write. I can put it together. This is all you have to do is level with the American people. The American people will at least respect that. But now it's so divisive. Everybody's now going to get into their respective silos. Big time now. Big time. Because we are going to the polling booth in a few months. So everybody's going to be polarized, getting into their silos. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. Look at it. No. There's no leadership anywhere. None anywhere. And you're going to start seeing these protests come back to life. We're seeing them in Lebanon once again. Hong Kong over the weekend. Starting to pick up. They're just waiting. Waiting in the wings. If it was bad before COVID-19, it's even worse now. And you're already starting to hear talks of a second wave. Already talks of a second wave. A few more cases in China, a few more in South Korea, Some of the states that have opened up are already starting to see a little cluster here, a little cluster there. That's exactly what it is. It's all a cluster. It's all a cluster. It's all a blame game, which we discussed last week. The blame game. Check it out. Check them all out. All of these podcasts, I try to do my best to come up with catchy titles that can explain what's going on. That's all you got to do. I archive about 10 of them on thecapitalnews.com, but you can find all of them on our YouTube channel. Go to thecapitalnews.com, click on the YouTube icon. It'll take you right to our channel if you can't find it searching on YouTube. We explain it all. Sometimes I might sound like a broken record, but I have to. Because I'm up against Fox, I'm up against the mainstream media, I'm up against Bloomberg, CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, and they're all peddling something. They're all pushing some sort of narrative. I'm just trying to push the truth. I can't even watch the news anymore. I can't. Little clips here and there that I might catch on Twitter, or I'll turn something on every once in a while. I can't even watch it. I'm disgusted with all of these people. Because it's all doctored, it's all pushing everything. You look at the stock market, we're almost back to where we were, especially on the NASDAQ and NASDAQ 100. We're almost back to where we were at the highs in February. We are headed towards one of the deepest recessions we've ever seen, if not a depression, and I do believe it will be a depression. And we have a stock market that's back to where it's all-time highs. Just about. And when you look at it from a valuation perspective and some other methods, it's even more expensive now than it was a month and a half ago. 2 months ago. It's already May. That was February. This is ridiculous. But this is what happens when you take an American dream and turn it into a Ponzi scheme. Thank you so much for joining me. We have not heard the last of this. We are going to continue with this conversation well into the future. Our capital economics presentations are going to highlight more of this in depth, a breakdown by administration over the past few administrations, a breakdown of Social Security, a breakdown of Medicare, defense spending, the interest, all of these components that contribute to our deficits and national debt. We're going to hit them. We're going to hit them hard because you have to put this picture together and turn as many people on to the Capital News as possible, or at least our capital economics presentations. Because at least that's visual. That's something that people might be able to see. They're shorter, 15 minutes or less. I'm trying to do, keep their attention span. Get them educated. Because this is high-level stuff. I'm not going all nitty-gritty here, technical jargon. Turn them on to it. Educate people. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I'll catch you here tomorrow. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.